It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast as we turn up again after another weekend of frenetic property chasing around Australia. Were you part of it this weekend? Did you go in search of that future home or perhaps an investment property, maybe a second, third or fourth property? It is Monday, August the 25th. Roll on spring. Looking forward to saying goodbye to winter this year. The back half of 2025 is going to be a positive market. And for those of you wanting to get into your first property, you'll hate me saying that for good reason of upward movement on real estate. On Saturday, we were talking about these fire panels on apartment buildings across Australia and got a couple of emails that have come through. One is from Judy in Melbourne. Thank you for taking the time, Judy. You say that you're in your 50s looking to buy into an apartment block. And you said, thank you for the fire panels discussion and having an expert explain that. You have done what you call surface due diligence, but will go much deeper, which is probably code for you've grazed over it, but now it is time to get more serious. And another email came in from Greg in Brisbane, also echoing you, Judy. Greg said that he is buying an apartment for his daughter and last week nearly signed up for one in a block of 50. And now you've told the agent you need more information on the exterior panels of the complex and said thanks for the information. You are most welcome. And thank you for your kind words about the podcast, Greg. So do stay in touch, Judy and Greg. Let us know how that sort of evolves and what you find out. And if you are in a similar situation, let us know with our new voice messaging service. You can find the link below, record a message, and we'll feature you on the Real Estate Breakfast. Or if that is not your thing, you can send us an email to myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. So yes, a lot to break down when it comes to talking about these dangerous panels on the exteriors of these buildings around Australia. Before we get back to Michael Teys with our conversation, I want to take you back to the end of our conversation when I asked Michael how many of these buildings are affected with these panels in Australia.
It's uncertain how many buildings have it. Some estimates have it in around 3,000 or 4,000 buildings in Australia, although the New South Wales Cladding Authority, which is called Project Remediate, has the number at much less than that. They say that they've identified that there's still 225 buildings in New South Wales with this product. Only a very small number of them have actually had it removed, even though we are 15 or 10 years down the track from the La Crosse fire. The Victorian figures are a bit different, and this is what makes me doubt the New South Wales figures. Victoria say that there's 1,600 buildings there. We've got uncertainty about how many buildings exist with this, but what we do know is where cladding has been identified, there has been a very, very high reluctance by owners to remediate. Now, this product has now been banned retrospectively, so if it's on a building, it has to come off. The authorities have been very slow to prosecute people for not removing it. And I've been in many meetings with owners where we've discussed this product and there's just been a refusal to remove it. And part of that, again, going back to psychology, is people feel angry that they've been trapped in a building with this product. They want to blame somebody else. They're looking to government to fix the problem. But really, this is an owner's responsibility. It goes back to the point about due diligence and buying into buildings where you don't know what they're made of and who made them. This is a real problem socially, and the cost to remediate these apartments is very high. It can be in the order of $100,000, $150,000 per apartment. So, if you're in an apartment of an average value, that could represent your entire equity investment. So this is a very big problem. Not only is it a threat to people living and working in these buildings, but it is also a threat to the wealth and the financial resources of investors.
So that is where we left off on the subject on Saturday. Very important to highlight that again because of the high number of buildings involved with these panels attached. The uncertainty, I think we can all agree that is very clear. The reluctance by owners not removing these panels, that is all down to dollars and cents. You know, the blame game, as Michael mentioned, and we understand how that can completely wipe out your equity in one of these affected properties. But the danger is in plain sight, isn't it? Literally out in the open, which is why we wanted to continue the conversation with Michael this morning. So welcome back, Michael. I think we can all agree that people have misrepresented the facts around this product. In fact, when you look at the way they interpreted the building code, it was straight out dishonesty, the way in which they satisfied these provisions that you talk about. Perhaps just give us an example, more information on that.
So basically what they said was you take the outside of the panels, the aluminium part, and you test it, but you don't test it as built with all the petrol in the middle. It was just bizarre. Justice Woodward in the Lacrosse case in Victoria, dismissed this argument as just fanciful. And really, 20 odd years of conventional thinking amongst architects and engineers and builders and certifiers and regulators just was shown to be the nonsense that it was. And so it really is reprehensible that this product is there. So I have great sympathy for owners who find themselves with this product on their buildings. Nevertheless, it's their building and they have to remediate it. Now, they can sue, they can look for remedies, and some have. But of course, a lot of these entities are now wound up. They're without resources. Litigation is very hard. It's expensive. And so it's not a perfect solution. There's been a lot of pressure put on government. But, this is a difficult political pill for government. They need to admit that they got it wrong. They need to admit that they presided over a series of tests that were misrepresented to the market. Government also has to deal with the very difficult issue of, why should householders' taxes be used to bail out apartment purchases? So it's a very, very vexed political issue, but it's one that we're really still, all these years later, not facing up to. The same is happening in London. I've spent a bit of time in London working with leaseholders there who have enormous problems. There's tens of thousands of these buildings in London and very, very few of them remediated. So this is a very serious social problem that has impacted a lot of people in the world. You mentioned the United Arab Emirates. There's been 17 of these fires in the UAE. There's been a lot in China. And we're lucky, frankly, that there haven't been more in Australia.
It is such a complex issue, and I just want to go back just very briefly when I was saying you do that test. Yes, you were saying that the manufacturers knew. What I was really getting at was from a government level of doing those tests. Were they being told, from the manufacturers that, no, it's okay, or did those tests they just didn't do the right amount of due diligence on the testing?
Well, the testing, just to set that scene, the testing, and this is part of the problem, in 1998, we did away with local councils doing certification of buildings, and we went to private certification. We also, at that time, the Building Code of Australia, which is a minimum standard, people sometimes forget, and we created this pathway called Deemed to Satisfy, where people putting buildings together could really make up their own rules to an extent about what building componentry satisfied the test. So government the government stood back from the late 90s on and took a very light touch. And we had this self-regulatory system. Now, this happened all over the world, and it certainly happened in Australia. So government abrogated the hands-on, invasive, interventionist-type testing and supervision of building, left it to suppliers and builders and developers to really self-assess.
Yeah, deem to satisfy was anything but that. Once the government hands were off this, self-assessing with the aim of safety standards for buildings with this product was, I think you can make the argument, was inverted in the other direction towards how much money can we make, throwing away the safety component. And too bad if you buy into a building not knowing what the building exterior has on it.
And this is where the mischief began. And this is where people started to act motivated by profit and greed. You mentioned the Netflix series. That's largely based on a book by a gentleman called Peter Apps called Show Me the Bodies. And that is an exceptional expose of how this attitude of greed and profit became the driver rather than safety. It really calls into question the way in which we approach building regulation. Now, in the wake of Grenfell, in the wake of Opal Towers, which was the structural collapse of a building in New South Wales, in the wake of that, the New South Wales government has gone back to the old interventionist way of supervising buildings. And I've just completed a research paper which I delivered last week on this topic. And what's interesting is no other state in Australia has followed New South Wales' lead by going back to this system of being more engaged and more involved in the supervision of building by building. It's something that hasn't been picked up around the world yet. So I'm very interested to see how the New South Wales reforms improve the quality of buildings, and whether or not this will be picked up in other states and territories and indeed other jurisdictions around the world.
Yes, so New South Wales going back to the old way of being the safety guardrail is better late than never. And for those eyes that are watching New South Wales, there's going to be a lot of heat. And Michael, without a doubt, with all the information that you have thrown up, you are the man that is right across all of this major problem, especially facing people that are caught up in removing the panels, who are fearful of losing money. But in the name of safety, it has to be done. And I knew that it was worth continuing this subject this morning from Saturday. Good luck in this nightmare scenario and situation. And thanks again for coming back on to explain the rest of it.
My pleasure, Craig.
Remember to follow us on any of the podcast platforms so you never miss a real estate podcast. You can follow us on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. Know your property with us. From first-time homebuyers to seasoned investors to breaking property news. Discover the stories behind the real estate.
What do you reckon Canberra 1995 median house price was?
I'm going to stick to around the 80s. It seems to be there's a bit of a collection there.
125,000. Brisbane was 127,000.
Most of the people buying in St. Mary's are young families or young couples hoping to enter the market and buy the first property. Median house prices in St. Mary's are around $1 million.
And also the savings buffers that were built up through COVID really saw a lot of financial stability during interest rate rises. Mortgage arrears have remained quite low, and now we're starting to see a bit of an improvement in household conditions as well. That savings rate is moving back up.
If you own your own home, you get housing services from that. You know, your house accommodates you. And what imputed rent is it's the value of those services. It's like if I was to rent that house instead of own it, how much would I have to pay in rent for that?
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.